Good morning. It is 8:01 a.m., March 21st, 2025. I would like to go ahead and call the full board meeting to order. Can we have roll call, please?
Dr. Zafran,
Present.
Farmer,
Present.
Mr. Kokonos,
Present.
Mrs. Barnes, Dr. Bhatia,
Present.
Mr. Crane, Dr. Deloche,
Here.
Mrs. Rosal,
Present.
Dr. DeStefano,
Present.
Mrs. Harrod, Dr. Jones,
Present.
Dr. Martinez,
Here.
Mrs. Morgan,
Here.
Dr. Nadeau, Dr. Nyack,
Present.
Dr. Quinones,
Present.
Dr. Tibbles,
Here.
Mr. Troncoso,
Present.
and Dr. Vanderwide.
Yes, sir.
Quorum and may proceed.
Thank you. As always, we always start with our mission statement. Our mission is to protect and enhance the public's health, safety, and welfare by establishing and maintaining standards of excellence used in regulating the practice of medicine and ensuring quality healthcare for the citizens of Texas through licensure, discipline, and education. The first item on the agenda is my update. As all of you know, we are in the middle of session, and there are quite a few bills that would affect the medical board or impact what we do that is going through right now. I know Tori will give a little bit of an update later on and go into a little bit more details. But as always, those that impact us, we usually get asked what the impact may be by legislators. They reach out to us and ask us, and not necessarily that they're just going to pass a bill, but how can they make it better? What would the impact be? And what would the ramifications from the standpoint of rulemaking and so forth be on us? So the couple of bills out there that are out there for consideration that would definitely have an impact on us. I know that there's a telemed bill that was actually heard on the at the Public Health Committee yesterday. It's primarily, I believe, a registration, not necessarily a license. And obviously, depending on how that actually comes out, there may be some concern. So we're definitely working with the committee on what that should look like. The other thing that's out there, and many of you have heard this, is what's called the doctor's bill. That is a bill that has been looked at to address shortages in rural areas, looking at a pathway for licensure for IMGs is something that many other states have already embarked on. I believe there's at least 9 states out there that have already passed laws around this. There is a bill that is already put out at the Senate side and has a companion bill on the House side. We have offered suggestions as to some of the things as to how it should look like and how we can make sure that the proper amount of oversight is done, as these folks who are very capable can potentially provide a pathway to licensure and at the same time help with the difficulty of access to healthcare in rural areas. So the impact on us, of course, is that I believe in the bill as it stands right now, there would be quite a few rules that would be asked of us to come up with as that stands. And a lot of the specifications on pathway to potential board eligibility is something that is also worked on there. A lot of details in it. I'm just kind of giving you guys a little bit of a flavor of what that might potentially look like. Obviously, there are things that have to happen at the national level with ABMS, especially if there's going to be criteria to help meet board eligibility or to help qualify for board eligibility, and how that pathway would be created for some of these folks. So again, more to come on that. But if that were to pass, that may require us to have a task force that would specifically look at that. It's one of those things where we got to make sure that the stakeholders are involved and have a certain amount of input onto that. It's not something that we're going to just develop overnight. So it's going to require a little bit of thought, looking at what other states are doing, looking at the national level and seeing what the national boards are doing potentially as some of these rules are fluid and as they're changing as we're moving forward. We want to try to get it right at the beginning because there are some states like Tennessee, for example, that passed it initially without a lot of board input. And that, of course, kind of had some unintended consequences. They had to go back and redo quite a bit of it. And that was a little bit clunky. So lesson learned, and it's things that we're looking at to make sure that we understand what some of the pitfalls are and try to head it off again if we go down that path. The funding for the medical board and all that, I'll leave that to Brent to talk about later on and how that's going and what we've been asking for and what we're potentially going to be able to hopefully get. One of the things that we've always been talking about, of course, is the website, communications, the ability for our licensees to access us, the ability for the public to access us. You've already probably seen some changes in the way the website looks. Again, it's an attempt to make it look a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more accessible. And as those changes move forward, I'd like to, of course, always hear back from our board members as to suggestions as to how we can potentially make that also look a little bit better. But also that involves the call center folks who try to call in and ask for help, making that also a little bit more accessible. So that is the highlight of my report. The next board meeting is in June. So assuming that we don't have a special session for whatever reason, we should have by then a fairly good idea of some of the bills that are going to impact the board and what we need to do moving forward to whatever it might be, whether it's writing rules or addressing it as it moves forward. So, okay. The next item on the agenda is consideration and possible action for dispositions below minimum guidelines. At the moment, there is none there. So we'll go to agenda item number 4, consideration and approval of mediated settlement agreed orders. You see in front of you several areas under administrative rules, crime laws, impairments, peer review, state action, standard of care, and late orders.
It is 4 and 5.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. Sorry. So actually number 4 just has those 6 items underneath it. So consideration and approval of mediated settlement agreed orders. Are there any extractions on agenda item number 4? Are there any recusals on agenda item number 4? Do we have a motion on agenda item number 4?
This is Dr. Quinones, motion to accept the consideration and approval of the mediated settlement agreed orders.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second, Dr. Farmer.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, now number 5, consideration and possible action for remedial plans. And under that is administrative rules, crime laws, impairments, which is none under there, peer review, state action, standard of care, and late orders. Are there any extractions or recusals under agenda item number 5?
I have one, standard of care number 27,
Okay. Extraction or recusal?
extraction and recuse. Or somebody else can extract it, I'll recuse. 27 needs to be pulled.
Okay. So Dr. Bhatia is recusing from agenda item number 27. From item number 27. Is there an extraction on agenda item number 5? Okay. So we have an extraction on item number 27. Any other extractions or recusals? Seeing none, is there a motion on everything except for item number 27 in agenda item number 5?
I'll make a motion to accept remedial plans with the extraction from, what number was that?
Item 27.
27.
All right. Is there a second?
Second, Vanderwine.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right. Motion passes. So item number 27, is there discussion on item number 27?
I mean,
You're recused, you won't be able to, make any comments. So Anybody has any specific thing on 27 that they'd like to discuss in general, or ask any questions, then we can answer that. But if it gets anything that's too specific, then we may need to go into an executive session to discuss it further.
Mr. Carlton, it might help if staff lays out a little
Yeah.
bit about this remedial plan. This is for a licensee that has recently been suspended and has been subject of a criminal indictment and arrest directly related to their practice of medicine. And so if somebody did want to make a motion not to approve this one, it would just stay in litigation and be pending while the criminal case is going through the process. We could file it at SOA as well, but we would ask for direction to leave that to the litigation strategy.
I'll make a motion to not approve this and just hold it in investigations.
All right.
Second,
there's-
Madam Clerk.
There's a motion by Dr. Tibbles and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor of not adopting or approving number 27, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that passes. All right, agenda item number 6, consideration and possible action for agreed orders. There's administrative rules, crime laws, none there, impairments, peer review state action, standard of care, unprofessional conduct, and late orders. Are there any extractions or recusals on agenda item number 6? All right, seeing none, is there a motion on agenda
Yeah,
item number 6?
motion to accept.
Second, Stefano.
So there's a motion to accept the action for the agreed orders, and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Number 7, consideration and approval of modification requests, termination request orders. There are 9 items there. Is there any recusals or extractions on agenda item number 7?
Deloach for recusal number 8.
All right, Dr. Deloche is recusing from item number 8. Any further recusals or extractions? All right, well, with that, is there a motion on agenda item number 7?
Move to approve item number 7, Morgan.
Okay, motion to
Second, Barr.
approve the approval of modification request, termination request orders, and it's been seconded. With the exception of Dr. Deloche on item number 8, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, agenda item number 7 passes. All right, number 8, consideration and approval of modification request, termination request of non-public rehabilitation orders. There are none there. Number 9, consideration and approval of cease and desist orders. Are there any extractions or recusals on agenda item number 9? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 9?
Quinones accept the consideration and approval for the cease and desist orders, item number 9. Motion.
Motion's been
Second,
made.
Farmer.
Seconded by Dr. Farmer. Is there any discussion on agenda item number 9? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And item number 9 passes. Number 10 and 11, there are none there. Number 12, consideration and approval of consent orders. There's one item there. Is there any extractions or recusals on agenda item number 12? Seeing none, is there a motion on agenda item number 12?
Motion to approve 12,
Barnes.
Stefano. Second.
All right, there's a motion that's been made. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? And item number 12 passes. Number 13, consideration and approval of determination of default. There are none there, which brings us to number 14, and it is after 8:10, so we can move forward with that. Consideration and approval of proposal for decision, and we have 2 items there. So we'll go ahead and move forward with the first one.
Shane.
Oh, there we go.
It-
Sorry about
it-
that. Just for the record, good morning, everyone. Shane Neldon with the Litigation Division. I'd like to reserve whatever time I have left
of this presentation for rebuttal.
Before we get started, is Dr. Holcomb or his counsel online with us?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
great. Want to make sure we have you here. So again, as you can see, each side will be given a total of 10 minutes. Board staff will go first. Whatever time they have left, Mr. Melder's already indicated he'd like to reserve to make a closing statement. So he will go first, then you guys will go. He will finish, and then the board staff, board members, if they have any questions, they'll start asking them at that time. So please proceed.
Yes, sir. This case involves William Holcomb respondent's care and treatment of one patient, a 31-year-old woman with a previous diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Respondent testified that he was unaware that his office was in possession of the patient's prior medical records from Seton Healthcare, and he did not review them prior to evaluating the patient. Nevertheless, respondent questioned the patient's prior diagnosis of bipolar disorder and proceeded to diagnose the patient with depression, anxiety, and ADHD. Respondent testified that he asked the patient questions about the 18 symptoms of ADHD, but did not record all that was discussed in his session with the patient in his medical notes. Respondent did not use the ADHD rating scale. Respondent did prescribe the patient with Vyvanse. Now, adult patients should be started with a low dose of Vyvanse and then gradually titrated up over a series of weeks. Respondent instructed the patient to mix 1 70-milligram capsule of Vyvanse in 1 cup of water and drink half, which meant that assuming the patient did this correctly, the patient would consume approximately 35 milligrams of Vyvanse. Respondent did not include instructions on how the patient was to take the medication in his medical notes. Respondent was taught to prescribe Vyvanse in this way by the pharmaceutical company's package insert and what the drug reps told him. Respondent did not disclose the reasonably foreseeable side effects for Vyvanse to the patient. Now, thankfully, pharmacy records indicate that the patient did not fill the prescription for Vyvanse. Now, board staff made several charges in the complaint, and not all of the charges were found of violations, but the ALJ did find 3 violations. Respondent's failure to review the patient's previous medical records in his office, his possession as part of the initial psychiatric evaluation, fell below the standard of care. Respondent may be sanctioned for failure to maintain adequate medical records. That included failure to document the full assessment and evaluation of the patient, and failure to include the dosage of Vyvanse respondent intended the patient to take. And the 3rd violation found was failing to disclose reasonably foreseeable side effects of a treatment. Respondent failed to practice in an acceptable professional manner consistent with public health and welfare. These are not findings that we're arguing here today. These are findings that were found by the ALJ. Now, the board litigation division has proposed several ordering provisions be applied to the respondent. We're not asking for a public reprimand. We're not asking for any restrictions and no chart monitoring, even though that's within the guidelines. The board staff is recommending PACE medical record keeping and PACE Plus. That's education to address and hopefully prevent future medical record keeping and other practice deficiencies. We're recommending CME, that's more education, specifically 8 hours in treating multiple diagnosis ADHD patients like the patient here, 8 hours in patient-physician communications to address the types of miscommunications that we saw in this case, and 8 hours in risk management. Board staff is also recommending the JP exam be ordered to ensure that respondent, again, is aware of all the rules and regulations that are applicable to his practice, and a $3,000 penalty, all again within the sanction guidelines. I reserve the remainder of my time for rebuttal.
Thank you. You've got just under 6 minutes left. Ms. Jordan and Dr. Holcomb, you may proceed.
Good morning. Okay, so Mr. Melder did a great job describing the findings of the ALJ. This is a one patient case where there was one visit. And the ALJ declined to find any violations relating to the standard of care when it comes to Dr. Holcomb's diagnosis and treatment of the patient. There are no violations relating to unprofessional conduct. There are no violations relating to non-therapeutic prescribing, and there are no aggravating factors. So the violations here are, as Mr. Neldner said, failure to review the patient's previous medical records in his possession. That's a violation of the standard of care. But the finding number 10 of the ALJ's findings of fact says Dr. Holcomb was not aware that his office was in possession of the patient's medical records and did not review them prior to evaluating the patient. The second violation has to do with failing to disclose reasonably foreseeable side effects of a treatment. The judge called this, again, a violation of the standard of care. And but they also noted in their PFD that Dr. Holcomb did not testify that he discussed the potential side effects of Vyvanse with the patient. So the only evidence on this issue are his medical notes, which do not reflect that he did so. And then finally, the record keeping violation relating to failure to document full assessment and evaluation of the patient, and failing to document the intended starting dose of Vyvanse. And the ALJ made findings regarding Dr. Holcomb dictates his medical notes, but does not review or correct typos until he prepares to see a patient for their follow-up appointment, and that the patient never came back for a follow-up appointment. The ALJ also found mitigating factors. That would be that Dr. Holcomb has been licensed since 1998, but has no history of board discipline, and that as a behavioral health provider, he takes insurances, which is a value to the community, or present value to the community. And just so you know, the backdrop of Dr. Holcomb's practice is that he has 1,700 active patients, and because he takes insurances, he accumulates and welcomes a tough population of patients. He would say up to 30% of his patients have impairments to their activities of daily living because of their conditions. So the question before the board today is, what is the appropriate sanction for the violations found by the ALJ? And I realize that Board Rule 190.14 applies to the informal case resolution process, but I believe that the board still wants to promote consistent sanctions for similar violations, and it can be instructive to review to determine how serious the board finds the violations in this case. I also do not think the board wants to give the impression that they are penalizing a licensee for exercising their due process rights. So, in regards to the order proposed by staff, I am concerned that some of the ordering terms do not relate to the ALJ's findings of fact and conclusions of law, and therefore might be found arbitrary and capricious if as reviewed in judicial review. So, for example, we have the PACE Plus program. These are quotes from the PACE website. PACE Plus, an optional intensive customized engagement, is designed to further support participants of the high impact emotions, ethics, or professional boundaries courses. Our CME courses are the first step in addressing behavioral concerns in physicians. After the remedial education in their CME courses, participants can further enhance their learning by creating and implementing a maintenance of accountability and professionalism plan and coaching. There's no findings relating to unprofessional conduct, so I question why this coaching program is necessary. Similarly, 8 hours of the CME in treating multiple diagnosis ADHD patients. Again, there were no violations of the standard of care relating to Dr. Holcomb's diagnosis and treatment plan. And then 8 hours of patient-physician communications. There aren't any allegations that Dr. Holcomb failed to communicate with the patient or communicated with the patient inappropriately. And when it comes to the rest of the terms, I'll go through what I think our proposal is. We propose 8 hours of risk management because the record demonstrates that Dr. Holcomb is aware of the record keeping requirements for his specialty, but he did not review and finalize his dictation in this one instance. And the reason I don't recommend or ask for medical record keeping is because the PFD states that the record was incomplete because Dr. Holcomb did not finalize per his process. So reviewing the dictation before he sees the patient at the next appointment because the patient was lost to follow-up. The failure is a risk management one, not a lack of knowledge or disregard of the medical record keeping requirements. I also add that Dr. Holcomb is board certified by the American Board of Psychiatry and Neurology, such that his maintenance of certification requires 30 specialty Category 1 CME credits per year, and at least 8 of those must be practice-relevant self-assessment, improvement in medical practice, and patient safety activities. The reason that I don't think that it's appropriate to recommend the JP exam to Dr. Holcomb is because he actually took it after he accepted a remedial plan in August of 2021. So since this conduct, he has taken and passed the jurisprudence exam. And then when it comes to administrative penalty, I think that we look to the occupations code for how to assess administrative penalties. So, for example, the statute says that whether a violation relates directly to patient care or involves only an administrative violation should go towards the consideration of what penalty to assess. And I'd argue, and obviously this is in the judgment of the board and the eye of the beholder, but I'd argue that not knowing that you had prior records to review is more of an administrative violation than a standard of care one. I'd also argue that failing to finalize your dictation is also more administrative than relating to the standard of care. And then finally, in looking at the board's disciplinary matrix, which again does not control in the circumstance, but can be useful in terms of figuring out what the range of penalty is. There's a low sanction, a high sanction, and then you adjust upward or downward depending on whether they're aggravating and mitigating factors. So we have a 1 patient, 1 visit case where the sanctions relate to not reviewing records that he wasn't aware that his office held, and then failing to finalize his dictation in that it didn't record that he had advised the patient regarding his the risks and benefits of the medication he prescribed, which again, standard of care violation, and found basically on the principle that if it wasn't documented, it wasn't done, and record keeping violations. The low sanction for medical records is CME in the appropriate area. And the high sanction includes an administrative penalty in the JP exam, and then the intensive course in medical record keeping if there's a prior order for inadequate record keeping. Again, Dr. Holcomb has no prior disciplinary history. And so the PACE course for record keeping, which is 17 hours of CME, seems to be a little high based on the disciplinary matrix. And then again, regarding the standard of care, low sanction is CME in the appropriate area, whereas the administrative penalty is listed under the high sanction. So again, the bottom line here for the board is based on the findings of the ALJ, what is the appropriate penalty? I know you all sit on IC panels, you're all advised by hearings counsel in those panels about what the appropriate sanction is. You've seen conduct like the findings in this case. And all I ask is that you recommend or approve an order for Dr. Holcomb that is in line with how you would find in any given case in the interests of justice and fairness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. Elder?
Yes, Mr. Carlton, I'll be brief. The presentation was very comprehensive, however, slightly off from what the findings were from the ALJ. There was a finding that the patient's medical records were a failure to follow fell below the standard of care, but it wasn't merely that the respondent failed to finalize his dictation, it was that he failed to document the full assessment and evaluation of the patient, failed to include the dosage respondent intended the patient to take. And as far as the medical records that he did not know existed, board staff would argue that it is incumbent upon respondent to at least inquire if there are medical records before a treating physician would to discard a patient's long-standing diagnosis and engage in, on one visit, an entirely different approach to that patient's medical care. As far as the dictation is concerned, that was discussed as one aspect of why the medical records were incomplete. However, again, if you look at the PFD, the ALJ made it very clear, failed to document the full assessment and evaluation during the hearing on the merits, and this is in the transcript that's available. The 18 questions regarding to ADHD had to be abstracted from testimony that these questions were actually asked in order to determine whether or not the patient had ADHD or could be said to have ADHD. Expert for the board testified what those questions were, was able to articulate each question. If you look at the actual transcript, respondent was unable to do that. Now, did he get through all 18 questions to arrive at an accurate diagnosis of ADHD? It's not for me to say, but that was a serious question. And when we look at continuity of care, and we look at the reliance that subsequent providers have upon previous medical records when evaluating whether a diagnosis and treatment plan is appropriate, we have to look at those medical records. Medical records were very scant on those material aspects. Furthermore, if you look at the testimony in the hearing on the merits and the transcript, it's determined in the exhibits as well that the patient did not rely upon this diagnosis, went for subsequent care, and went to a different physician. As it said, the patient did not fill the prescription because even the patient was suspicious of the reliability of this particular diagnosis and treatment plan. Thankfully, she did that. As far as the CME, talk about multiple diagnoses. This is actually appropriate here. We've got a patient with multiple diagnoses and ADHD, and CME would be appropriate here for the respondent because in this particular case, there is a question of whether or not the respondent took into consideration all of the other diagnoses when prescribing Vyvanse. There was testimony that patients with anxiety and various other conditions, when treated merely for ADHD, there can be some complications. That's in the record. As far as communications are concerned, it's a center point of this case. Respondent failed to disclose reasonably foreseeable side effects of a treatment. It's the communication largely that was the issue. No real good instructions, certainly nothing documented, and no disclosure of the reasonable foreseeable side effects. And then as far as the idea that respondent doesn't finalize his dictation until the next visit, board staff would question the wisdom of such behavior, because if there were concerns at the time of taking that dictation and the next patient visit is months later, the respondent is expecting to hold in his mind the subtleties that his, I'll say, shorthand notes might have contained instead of documenting it immediately. And so board staff believes that the ordering provisions suggested by litigation staff are appropriate and that the board adopt those. And they're in front of you right now. And we wait on your order. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First is, was this the first time that he saw this patient?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So why did he have previous medical records for this patient?
I believe this was a referral from the facility that she came from. I have that from Seton Healthcare.
Okay, so there's a referral that came from a facility with the medical records. So I'm presuming that that kind of information would be relevant and important for treating and assessing a patient that is coming for the first time. Is that presumption correct, doctor?
That, oh,
I can't hear you.
Dr. Holcomb.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that the we were just going over the findings here. So again, that's the ALJ's finding is that that
I'm
Dr.
actually asking the
Holcomb-
physician. I'm asking the physician why he didn't know that a referral from a facility that involved a patient that was being referred to him was something that he wouldn't have known about or didn't know that existed or whatever that might be.
Yes, sir. It's exceedingly rare that previous medical records, especially from a facility, are sent to the office before a patient is. Would be exceedingly rare. And at the same time, this patient was sent from an intensive outpatient program and was really ill. And she was not doing well at all with her current diagnosis and her current treatment. And I believe it's important for me to be as objective and unbiased as possible. And I did a complete 90-minute evaluation and feel that I was very thorough. And in my experience, since 1998, that my diagnosis was accurate. And I would have.
Yeah, it's okay. I think you answered my question. So my understanding is that this was a patient that was not exactly straightforward, that came from intensive therapy, that had records talking about this intensive therapy. So it kind of seems to me, at least from my standpoint, that if a physician receives a complicated patient, I would want to know what was kind of done and what was tried and what was not tried, what worked and what didn't work. So anyway, it doesn't seem like it's just
sorry to interrupt.
No, hold on. I'll give you a second. But from that standpoint, from my standpoint, it would seem that it would be very important that even if you didn't know that those medical records had come, that there be an indication in your notes that I need to get my medical records to understand the intense therapy that he was under and try to understand how that might impact diagnosis and stuff like that. So it's not exactly irrelevant or a minor thing. I would actually argue that it's extremely relevant and probably very important. You wanted to say? Ms. Jordan?
Sorry, I just needed to correct an assumption. Records at issue are actually from the primary care office and not from the behavioral health institution.
Okay. All right. And my understanding also is that the reason that you could not get a remedial plan or was not offered a remedial plan for this case is because you actually had another non-disciplinary action by the board several years ago, correct?
Dr. Holcomb's had a remedial plan that was entered in August 2021.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions?
What came of the patient? Were there any untoward effects of the treatment of the patient?
Dr. Badia, the patient did not rely upon the diagnosis and treatment plan, and so went back to the primary care physician, back to the hospital, got another doctor, and got entirely different treatment. So the patient was fine.
Thank you.
It's not different. It's exactly the
If there's no other questions, I'm going to make a recommendation that we go into executive session.
Second.
So motion's been made to go into executive session for deliberations regarding disciplinary action. It's been seconded by Dr. Bhatia. Is there any objection by any of the board members? All right, seeing none. There being no objection, the meeting is now closed to the public at 8:41 a.m. on March 21st, 2025. The meeting will continue in executive session for the purpose of deliberations concerning disciplinary action, investigative information, peer review information, and rehabilitation orders under the authority of the Medical Practice Act, sections 152.009, 160.006 through .008, 164.007C, and 164.202 and .203 occupations code. All right, you can stop the recording and go into executive session. Okay, executive session ended at 9:06 a.m. on March 21st, 2025. There was no final action, decision, or vote with regard to any matter considered or discussed in executive session. A certified agenda of the executive session was made. All right, with that, is there any comments or questions or concerns by the board members? Any comments or questions? Is there anyone that would like to propose a motion? All right, Ms. Barnes?
We can't hear her if her mic is not on.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the
The mics are cutting out for us online.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, we're going to try to work on this for a second before we proceed.
Yeah, we've got you right now, Dr. Safran. We can hear in the boardroom.
My mic is working, but I don't think Ms. Barnes' mic is working. Ms. Barnes, why don't you go ahead and come here?
I don't think that mic is working either. Sorry. Use Dr. Safran's, please.
Based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, we would like to propose 8 hours of treating patients with ADHD, 4 hours of patient physician communications, 4 hours of risk management, 4 hours of medical record keeping, the JP exam, and $2,000 as a penalty.
And would that be adapting the findings of fact and conclusions of law? Okay, thank you.
All right, so there's a motion before the board. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Vanderweide. Is there any comments or questions or concerns or any further deliberation on this? I guess the only thing I would just say before we vote is that, this to me doesn't seem like just medical record keeping. Based on the ALJ's judgment, there is a statement that the medical record keeping did impact the standard of care. However, I also feel that we want to make sure that the sanctions that we are proposing is commensurate with what was actually done also. So, with what Ms. Barnes has proposed, I feel that kind of meets that where there's some, we're not proposing the pace and we're not proposing the sanctions to be, or the fee to be as high. Did you propose the JP exam? I couldn't remember. Yes. So I think it's just the JP exam, a lower fee, and a specific number of hours. So from my standpoint, that seems reasonable. Any other comments from anyone? All right. With that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right. Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. The second PFD, you could go ahead and start with that.
Yeah, I think this one is working still. Okay, moving on, to PFD number 2 for your consideration today. Do we have Dr. Thomas? Not here in the room. Is Dr. Thomas online or counsel for Dr. Thomas? If they were planning to. Okay. All right. Well, just in case, then it's still, I think, set not as a default. So we'll set you for your 10 minutes. And you can reserve in the unlikely instance, I guess, they show up. You may proceed.
I'm sorry, the microphone is not on.
Yeah, make sure
I'm
your
sorry,
microphone light is green. Yeah, thanks.
I'm sorry. Uh, this case is about an out-of-state disciplinary action. In 2022, Dr. Thomas was arrested in Missouri on 2 felony counts of possession of a controlled substance. Specifically, it was medical grade marijuana and ecstasy. When the Colorado Medical Board learned of this, she is licensed in Colorado, or she was, they issued an order requiring her to submit to an examination with the Colorado Physicians Health Program. She did not do so. She did not submit, she even timely or at all. So the Colorado Medical Board suspended her license. And since this out-of-state suspension is a violation of the Texas Medical Practice Act and board rules, the board staff initiated this action. In 2024, we did have an ISC and invited Dr. Thomas to attend. She did not appear. In 2024, board staff filed its complaint. In October, board staff moved for summary disposition on the out-of-state disciplinary action. Respondent did not file a response, which under SOA rules and as recognized by the ALJ in the opinion, was considered an absence of opposition. The ALJ did grant summary disposition. After that decision came out, Dr. Thomas and board staff, she communicated with board staff, and there was a discussion about the hearing date for the aggravating mitigating factors hearing. She did agree to that setting. The hearing was set. She did not appear for the aggravating mitigating hearing. Board staff did appear. In February, so just last month, the ALJ issued the proposal for decision. And this month, the ALJ issued a written notice that the time period to file exceptions had closed and was returning the case back to the board. So I do have, if you wanted to look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law, you don't really need to, but if you did, numbers 4, 5, 6, 11, and 12 of the findings of fact are relevant to deciding sanctions. And then on conclusions of law, 3, 7, and 8 are relevant. Essentially, it's what I've already reported, that she failed to comply with the Colorado order to submit to an examination. Her license was suspended. That was a violation of the Texas Medical Practice Act. We were granted summary disposition, and she did not appear. She didn't appear after let me start from the beginning. She didn't appear at the ISC, even though she was invited and notification was confirmed. She did not file an answer at SOA, even though she was served with notice. She did not file a response to the summary disposition motion. She did not appear at the aggravating mitigating hearing. So all of these really demonstrate to board staff and to you members that she just really has not shown interest in maintaining or fighting for her Texas medical license. So really what we're here to discuss is what sanction is appropriate for this licensee. For all of those reasons, we do recommend that this be treated like a kind of like a default order, and she didn't appear today. And we did confirm that she did receive notice. So our proposed sanction is license revocation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Again, is the respondent here to be able to respond? Okay, seeing none. All right, you have before you this proposal for decision. Are there any questions regarding the findings of fact with this PFD? Dr. Batia?
No, I want to make
That's okay. If you want to make a motion, make a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to accept the PFD as set forth.
Deloach, second.
Okay, motion's been made. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those.
So just make sure the motion is to
To
accept.
revoke.
Yeah, to accept board staff's recommendation and the ALJ's finding of fact and conclusions of law, correct?
Yep.
Yes. All right.
Yes.
Yes. All right. And again, no further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. All right. So now we are on to our executive director report. Brent?
Yes, good morning. And again, welcome everyone. It has been 5 years, just over 5 years since our last full in-person board meeting. So welcome, especially for our new board members that it's their first time here or our first time getting to meet in person. As Dr. Zafran said, the legislative session is in full swing now. The committees have all been set and they are starting their meetings. I was there earlier this week. I was in House Public Health for about 4.5 hours and never got asked a question. And then I went to Senate Health and Human Services. It was they started about 4 hours late, but I was there for a total of about 6 hours and also didn't get asked any questions. But that's not always a bad thing. A lot of the legislation that's coming out that has to do with the medical board has to do, as Dr. Zafran said, with international medical graduates, the IMGs, ways to address pathways, alternative pathways for licensure for them. Also looking at different ways to get people into medical schools, which isn't a direct thing for the medical board, but getting into medical schools depending on their existing licensure in another profession or the size of the county that they're coming from to try to help with rural areas. There's also things that have to do with delegation. There are things that have to do with the board and how we can go about conducting our disciplinary hearings and our licensure. As Dr. Zafran said, things to do with certification, board certification, also with graduate medical education. So there's a lot going on out there. We are responding to as many of these bills as we can, especially when we get requests from the members for input. We also provide input at times, even if they don't specifically ask, just to let them know of potential concerns. Obviously, again, we cannot be for or against any legislation, but we can let them know what the impact would be and what additional resources the board may need to do certain things. So we continue to do that. We've got about 2.5 months left of the legislative session. So it'll be a busy time. And by the time you guys come back in June, the session will be over unless there is some special session, but the main session will be done. And the governor will probably have signed at least some of the bills by then. But we'll, as Dr. Zafran said, we'll have a pretty good idea of everything that is going to impact the board at that time. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Joey, who can give our budget.
Thank you, Brent. Good morning, board members. So I'll be brief recap of what we discussed yesterday. As it was mentioned, through the end of February, our revenue collections sit just under $19 million, which is in line with where we've collected last year. We do anticipate our revenue collections to be up as usual. Regarding our expenditures, we do show our bottom line as being in the negative right now because we have not fully collected for our jurisprudence, PHP, or NPDB, but our projections show that we should collect enough to net that out to zero. So we'll monitor that, and I'll give y'all an update in our next board meeting. And then also, too, just to recap, Senate Finance Committee did make their adopted decisions for the medical board. As of now, we're at 36% of our requests. The big ask for our HEALS, the modernization to our information technology system, was recommended by Senate. We anticipate the House to do some type of recommendation for that project as well. And then pending the outcome of House and committee conference, will determine kind of where our budget sits for fiscal years 2026 and 2027. I did also want to mention too, I forgot to mention yesterday, that our revenue collections report, I had an intern reconcile that data, and he found some errors with how the comptroller was targeting some of our revenue collections. So we were able to update that and have a better reflection of where some of our revenues sit by license type. So we updated that and also updated some of the percentages that went with that. So pending any questions, I'll hand it back to you, Brent.
Thank you, Joey. As was the update that was given during DPRC yesterday as part of the Texas PHP agenda item, when it comes to the budget, and as Joey said, we have not been collecting as much of the Texas PHP fee as we had originally anticipated. Part of that has to do, or really all of it has to do with the fact that whenever we originally calculated the amount that was going to be evenly spread across all of our licensees, we read the statute, and our interpretation is that we were able to assess that against all of our licensees. Comptroller and LBB has a different interpretation of it. So we do have some legislation that is put forward to fix that issue, just clarify it. But as of right now, we are not able to collect the fee on all of the license types that we had anticipated. So that's part of the reason why they're under collecting so far. But thankfully, we do have room to increase the fee. So as of last Friday, we did increase that up. And so we should collect enough to get to the end of the year. Any additional balance that is left over will just be carried over into the next fiscal year.
So you said that's for any license?
Yeah,
the
so
different license category?
right. So of all our license types, we're only able to collect, we're able to collect on most, but not all.
But they're all eligible
Yeah.
to use PHP?
Correct. They're all eligible to use the program. And so because we were under collecting, it was making PHP's bottom line show in the red also. But this will that problem for them. So the increase will carry forward for the remainder of the fiscal year, assuming this legislation passes that Senator Campbell put forward to fix this. Then we should be able to lower that fee back down starting beginning of FY26.
And the IT update does include the microfiche system, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
The full overhaul of our current system.
Yeah, the HEALS system, it's over $10 million that we've asked for, and so far has been approved on the Senate side. House Subcommittee on Article 8, that's us. I think their recommendations are supposed to come out today. So we're anxiously waiting to see what they grant us or deny us. But once we see if there's any overlap between the House and the Senate, then those two chambers will start trying to reconcile those budgets and see where we get in the end. Going back to all the legislation that's out there, there's other things like PA compact, other license type compacts, things that, like I said, about the Texas PHP fee. There's interest, obviously, amongst our Texas PHP governing board members. There may be interest against our other board members of our other licensees in some of these bills, and you guys also may have interest in these. Again, we can't be for or against any legislation, but you as an individual, I mean, you are welcome to exercise your freedom to talk to your legislators. You just need to make it very clear that you're doing so in your personal capacity, not in your professional capacity as a member of the board. And if you want to talk to them about how that legislation may help or hurt TMB or our licensees.
Yeah, there's another bill also that potentially will impact us. It's a continuing effort to help provide access to care in rural areas. Essentially, the overview of it would be that it would increase in counties with 25,000 or less, I believe. It would increase the ratio of supervision from 7-to-1 to 9-to-1. It would also allow for nurse practitioners or APRNs who pass USMLE Step 1 to enter medical school at the third year, but they would have had to pass USMLE Step 1 first and to enter in the third year and go down that pathway. It also allows for a pathway for, again, college students who are coming out of counties, I believe also 25,000 or less, to have a certain number of slots prioritized for them in medical school, as well as for residency. And there would be a loan repayment program, I believe, that would be tied into that. So that's one of the proposals that is out there. Again, a lot of different significant proposals, whether it's this or whether it's the IMG one, again, focused on access to care, especially in rural areas. The one thing about that bill also that would impact us potentially if it passes, there have always been a certain number of concerns raised by mid-level providers of fees that physicians levy upon them for being given prescriptive authority. I don't know the extent of that or where that is or whatever that might be, but that bill would also ask the Texas Medical Board to have oversight as to what those fees would be, whether it's in a rural area, an urban area, a suburban area, whatever that might be, what type of practice they're in, so forth and so on. So potentially, again, if this bill were to pass, there would be a lot of asks from the medical board as to what that would look like potentially. And again, that's where we have to be able to respond and provide input to legislators, again, not for or against. I mean, we're agnostic to that, but obviously if there's a financial impact, if that requires more resources, whatever that might be, that is something that we can help, give them more information on so they can make a decision as to how they proceed on and if there's additional funding that's required for them.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is there's always new members coming into the legislature every session, and trying to help them understand what we do and what we don't do is very important. There are misconceptions that the medical board creates medical education, that we are the ones that can make determinations on board specialization, that we are the ones that can approve graduate medical education. There are bills that would have us determine equivalency for ACGME and non-ACGME programs. There's things that want us to approve foreign medical schools for acceptance for licensure in the United States or for Texas. Those would require significant resources. We do not have the expertise to do those type things. However, if we are going to start approving foreign medical training programs, I have humbly offered myself to go to Bavaria and the South Pacific if need be to make those trips. But we would need significant travel resources, Joey, lots and lots of money. But we do try to let them know that that's not really in our wheelhouse of what we do at the medical board. So those type things, if you are speaking to your legislators, it is helpful to remind them of what we do and what we don't do.
Yeah, on a grander scale, there are efforts, again, just kind of going back to that. As I had mentioned earlier, ABMS is trying to put forth criteria as to the pathway of IMGs, what board eligibility might look like. There's also an entity called, of course, everybody's heard of ACGME. There is an entity out there called ACGME-I International. Right now, of course, their purpose is nothing other than to provide a certificate that that these foreign GME programs are certified to ACGME standards, but it means nothing as far as what that would mean to us. But there are conversations going on between ACGME, CMS, and other entities as to whether this ACGME-I could become a component of how these foreign GME programs could be accredited by by medical boards as they look at candidates and determine whether the GME program that they came out of is sufficient for us to be looking at this kind of provisional license. This kind of goes back to what I said this morning, that if this were to pass, we are probably going to require a task force. The licensure committee, is going to probably become very busy. You guys can catch up with DPRC, but there would be a lot of things that would need to be considered and proposed. I think the bills that are proposed out there would involve quite a bit of rulemaking from the Texas Medical Board to try to put a lot of these rules together. So obviously that would need to have a lot of deliberation, stakeholder input to come up with something that makes sense and answers what the legislation is asking us to do.
Okay, last thing for my report is we do have a presentation from Garza and Gonzalez on the internal audit plan.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, there you are.
Hi, am I on
Hi.
camera? I can't even see myself, but
We can't see you, but we can hear you.
okay, great. Board members, I'm Kim Lopez Gonzalez. I'm here representing Garza Gonzalez and Associates, the internal auditors for the Texas Medical Board. I'm here this morning to present to you the internal audit plan for fiscal year 2025, which is a 7-page document that you have included in your board packet. I'd like to thank staff especially Alicia Freeman, our contact for facilitating this process while we went through our risk assessment process to develop this internal audit plan. I don't intend to go through page by page because I know it was included in your board packet, but I would be happy to answer any questions. I'm going to summarize the plan for you. The plan was prepared using a risk assessment process, which is required to be performed on an annual basis. We reviewed a number of documents. We also reviewed questionnaires that were updated by the Texas Medical Board's president, by the executive director, and other individuals responsible for the 11 potential audit topics that we've identified. During the risk assessment process, we used a methodology as I indicated, by reviewing documents and updating our understanding of the operational areas of the Texas Medical Board. Based on that process, we have 11 potential audit topics identified, and those 11 potential audit topics are on page 6 of that document if you wanted to look at them. And they have been identified as high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. 2 of those areas are in the high risk area, 3 in the moderate, and 6 in the low risk. And for fiscal year 2025, we are recommending the audit of the compliance monitoring, which is one of the 2 high risk areas. Also, another important page included in the audit plan is the last page, which is titled the history of areas audited. That provides a 10-year look back of all the 11 areas, which identifies the time that those areas have been either audited or reviewed, not only by the internal auditors, but by the state auditor's office, by the comptroller, by DIR, or any other agency that may have performed a review on those areas. We did use that as part of our risk assessment to determine the last time those were looked at, and that helped us identify the areas as high risk, moderate risk, and low risk. And in addition to that area, the compliance monitoring that we are recommending for audit, we will also perform a follow-up of any outstanding prior year comments and recommendations and prepare the 2025 internal audit annual report, which is required to be submitted to the state auditor's office and other agencies by November 1st of 2025. And with that summary, I'd like to entertain any questions that the board members may have at this time.
No, thank you for that great report. Very helpful. I don't see any questions around right now, but appreciate you being here and updating us on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need a motion to accept the report. And then if accepted, then compliance would be the area that would be
Audited.
reviewed as today. Or
Move to accept this report, and compliance would be the one.
So motion to accept by Ms. Barnes. Is there a second?
Dr. Vanderwide.
Dr. Vanderwide. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Great. Thank you, and congratulations, compliance.
Yep.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item, one thing that I will mention is that next month we will be attending several of us will be attending the annual meeting of the Federation of State Medical Boards. The Texas Medical Board is a member, as are all the other medical boards and osteopathic boards around the country. There has been a lot of value in the Texas Medical Board being part of the organization, providing input and perspective of how we do a lot of things here in Texas, but also to learn from other medical boards with their experiences and where there may be opportunities for us to adopt some of their suggestions. And I think the boundaries issue was a good example of learning where there may be some value of how others have dealt with that. The other thing where there has been some value in learning what other medical boards do is the questions around potential physician impairment. I know that's always been a concern of physicians filling out the application as to what some kind of psychiatric condition entails. Is it something that is situational? Is it something that is chronic? Does it impact their license? All that kind of stuff. So again, not that there isn't room for improvement, but it is something that we have learned what others have done and have adopted some of those recommendations. But I do say that to highlight that the FSMB is an organization that brings together the medical boards and allows an opportunity for those conversations to happen, and where we find value to adopt some of those things if the medical board chooses to adopt. There is no notion that anything that the FSMB passes is prescriptive or is mandated on any of the medical boards. At the end of the day, the ultimate authority and decision to adopt anything within what the law allows us to do is the purview of this body right here. So I know that there have been comments made out in the public, concerns raised that we are somehow underneath the FSMB. That is not true. There are some things that we agree with what they say. There are some things that we don't agree with what they say. I happen to be on the board of directors of the FSMB. That is a position that is an elected position by all the other medical boards. And again, it's a conduit to provide conversation and advice and to offer perspectives. And I think Texas being able to have a voice in offering our perspective, I think creates and provides a lot of value. I think it's important to participate, and it's important for our state to be represented as these conversations happen, especially as in many instances it involves other national organizations, whether it be entities like CMS or ACGME, as I indicated earlier. As we talk about laws that are being contemplated around the IMGs, like the doctor's bill, being able to understand what other states have experienced as they have been able to use the FSMB as an area where they could have these conversations, have allowed us to offer good, strong suggestions to legislators as they draft these bills as to what the pitfalls have been with other states' experiences as they've adopted this. So again, certainly a tremendous value in being able to learn the mistakes of others, and again, to provide our perspective of how we do things here in Texas. Brent, did you want to comment on that also? Because, you know, as an executive director, there's a forum also for executive directors to be involved. I know there have been opportunities for other board members to be involved in certain committees and so forth. So again, those of you who would like to be involved one way or the other, let us know. They do offer what's it called, fellowships?
Yes.
Which is financial scholarships, which is financial backing to allow board members who have interests, whether it be in boundary issues and licensure, you know, whatever it might be, to help offer that perspective and again to learn from what others have done. But Brent?
Yeah, no, exactly. There is. It's a great resource for executive directors to communicate with each other. They also can get HR professionals to talk, licensure, enforcement. Chris has a lot of experience with FSMB now, so it's not just the board members that get a lot of value out of it. It's the staff members as well, and we're able to kind of talk about what works well, what doesn't work well, across an entire range, all the way from, you know, hiring staff and policies within the agency, all the way through even our licensees and communication with the media, communication with our legislators. So it's great to hear the success stories of things that work well, and people will definitely share things that didn't go well for them to help others avoid the same thing. So it is a great resource, and as Dr. Zafran said, that's all it is. It's a resource. It is not mandatory that we follow anything that the FSMB does, but it is great that Dr. Zafran is on the board, because being there, he can definitely help to highlight even more what Texas does and try to put that out to the rest of the country and be a leader as we should.
Yeah, thanks, Brent. All right, I'm going to skip over item 16. 17, public information update, and it's a little bit busy, so.
A little bit, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to touch on a little bit of legislative stuff. You guys did a great job covering it, so thank you for that. There are about 9,000 bills that were filed this session, which is pretty high, actually, comparatively to other sessions. We at the TMB are tracking about 400, well over 400 of those bills that might have some sort of impact on us, whether that's our employees through something with ERS, or it's our general operations, like our licensure enforcement efforts. or just our licensees in general, whether it's dealing with scope, delegation, supervision, things of that matter. But of the ones that these 400, that's probably about a quarter of these direct impact ones. The rest of them, there's a large focus on government efficiency and accountability, as you can imagine. So there are a lot of bills that have been filed having to do with public information, open records. That's something that will obviously impact the agency if those bills move forward. And another popular topic is agency rulemaking and looking at agencies and how they do their rulemaking. Are they too robust with it? Do we have too many rules? Obviously, we just got out of a rule review where we tried to streamline those and get rid of superfluous language and things that weren't necessary. So hopefully we're in a good place, but we'll just have to see what comes of those bills. Speaking of the rule review, we had received, obviously we just got out of our rule review and those rules went live in January, I think. We were receiving some stakeholder feedback that folks were confused about where things were in the new rules. Obviously, there's a huge reorganization. So we worked with the General Counsel's office to create a conversion chart, if you will, that shows, this is where it was in the previous rules and this is where it is now. Folks were getting concerned that things were just gone altogether, which wasn't ideal. So that's been posted on our website. And we also put a link to that in the latest edition of the bulletin that went out in February. CE Broker, that's the next thing I want to talk about. We are in the home stretch of the rollout for that. If you guys don't recall, CE Broker is an entity that we've partnered with to help our licensees track their CE requirements. We have one group left to roll out that will happen in June, and then every TMB licensee will have access to that program to help them track their CME or CE. It's free for a basic account. It's also optional. But there is legislation out there that would make this a requirement for state agencies to use. So in the event that that does pass, at least we are ahead of the curve in that regard. And then last thing, Dr. Zafran mentioned the website revamp. We are knee deep in that. It's going really well. We've seen some awesome wireframes at this point. It's looking like a real thing. People are getting really excited about how modern it's looking. It's looking much easier to navigate. And right now we're in the process of kind of playing around with that design to make it look beautiful, and then also doing a content audit to make sure that the information that's on our current website that we're moving over is the right information or presented in the best way. That is scheduled to launch in the fall, and we are on schedule to meet that. So hopefully, by September, we'll have a brand new fancy website for everyone to enjoy. That's all I have for you today.
And Tori, just so everybody knows, back in 2023, a lot of effort was made because we almost didn't get the funding for it, but a lot of effort was made to make sure that we had the funding to not only do the website, but also the communications accessibility with the call center. Again, getting the feedback from our licensees that it may be very difficult to get a hold of staff at the medical board. Obviously, if you have only limited resources and, if the call lines are busy, then they may get cut off. So increasing that capacity is something that the funding from 2023 allowed them to do. And the other part that, again, was extremely important was digitizing a lot of the files and paperwork and making sure that that was more accessible and efficient, which kind of allows us to go to the next step, which is, as was mentioned, going from Laserfish to something that's a little bit more user-friendly and not as archaic. So these fundings that come from the legislature are extremely important. They have a tremendous impact, typically for many years to follow. So we're just starting to see the impact from the last session. We had a little bit of a lull during the pandemic where our funding was behind. I think we caught up a little bit. Actually, we caught up for the most part in 2023. Made Joey jealous, but we're at a point right now where we can start looking at how we can actually enhance the experience for our licensees moving forward. And that's going to be a critical thing, making sure that, if they have concerns about fingerprinting, if they have concerns with CE Broker, that's a lot of things that we get a lot of emails about asking these questions. So as we get them, we have the conversation at the same time. What can we do whether it's on the website or whether it's somewhere else, to where we're making it more accessible, because for every one that I may get a question about, there's probably 10 out there that may not be able to access someone to be able to get that question answered. So we try to, give that feedback. And again, I'm saying this so that if you guys hear this from folks in your communities where you are, please let us know so we can give the team over here the kind of feedback that they need as they're actually putting this together in real time. Because again, for the public and for our licensees, it's important for them to feel like they have access to us and that we're able to respond to their needs and their concerns in a timely fashion, especially when access to care is a critical issue. The last thing that we want is for folks not to be able to get licensed in a timely fashion for things that we can fix and have an impact on as we move forward. So again, thank you, Tori and Joey, for all that you guys have done. And as we get to the end of this legislative session, hopefully what we're about to do for our budget moving forward. All right, I think that's it. Okay, like I said, I'm going to go to 18 as Ms. Gottschalk on, if there's going to be a physician assistant liaison report. Yeah, as all of you know, the PA and other entities are with the medical board. Ms. Gottschalk has been very involved and engaged with us. In fact, she went with us to the last FSMB meeting, was able to provide perspective on how the PA board. Oh, sorry, it was Ms. Crosby, but somebody from the PA board was there. Sorry. But yeah, we wanted to make sure that they at least had the opportunity to be involved with us and engage in the process. But Ms. Gottschalk, go ahead.
I don't have anything to report, but thank you for including us in the meeting, and the legislative summary that you gave was really interesting because some of it does hit PAs in there. And so we want to act as a resource if you guys have any questions about the proposed compact or any of those other issues that have PA focus in them.
Yeah, there is a PA compact that is being proposed. That again is something that is intended to ease the process of licensing physician assistants who are licensed in other states and would like to be licensed in the state of Texas, to help make that process easier if they are part of the compact.
And I guess the important point of it is they have to follow the rules in the state that they're practicing in. So if somebody from a compact state wanted to see a patient in Texas, they would have to follow Texas rules. And that's very much laid out in stone in the compact rules that the commission is putting together, and in the legislation also.
Yes, that's correct. And I know that I always hear this concern that whenever there's a compact that is being proposed, I think the same thing was being done with the medical licensure compact, is that are we going to be beholden to some national entity and so forth? And as Ms. Gottschalk alluded to, that the compact does help facilitate licensure, but does make sure that they are beholden to the laws and the rules within the state of Texas as it applies.
Right. It's just an effort to increase access to care, but also for continuity of care. If you have patients, for instance, at MD Anderson that come in to be seen there, and then when they go home, so that the PA can continue to follow them and give input to their care, even if their main care is cared for in a place locally, they would be able to still have treatment from MD Anderson PAs that were treating them while they were in the hospital. So thank you very much for including us.
Right, thank you. All right, with that, consideration and possible action regarding pending litigation. I don't believe there's anything there right now. Scott, I don't believe, right?
Yeah, we just got standard stuff.
Yeah. The rest until 25 are all reports. Again, we don't have any votes on these, but if anybody would like to extract and have a conversation about them, report on temporary suspension hearings, report on suspensions by operation of law, report on motions for rehearing requests, report on cease and desist orders approved by executive director, reports on automatic orders, and reports of cancellations regarding investigations. One thing that I will highlight on item number 23, reports on cease and desist orders. I know that there's been an effort or a thought, I got to be careful how I say this, or a thought out there that that we should not have the purview of doing cease and desist orders for licensees of other entities. And I know that there's been, some suggestions on legislation on doing so. The concern I have, and I think this is very specifically highlighted, but what has happened a week ago. But it is really up to the medical board to decide if somebody's practicing medicine without a license. I don't think it is up to another agency or another entity to make that determination. I'm sure a lot of you have heard in the past week where there was an arrest made for, not somebody that was just practicing medicine without a license, but was also doing something illegal, which was a midwife and a clinic that was doing abortions. Allegedly. Yeah, we're still allegedly. Number one, obviously, that is against the law in Texas. But number two, we have talked about the fact that if somebody is practicing medicine without a license, it is the purview of the medical board to issue a cease and desist order regardless of whether somebody who's not licensed by another agency or somebody that is licensed by another agency to address that. Now, we can refer it to the other agency to say, hey, there's a licensee that we feel is practicing medicine without a license, but I still feel it is important that this agency is able to issue a cease and desist order in circumstances where there's a concern that the public may be harmed because somebody is practicing medicine without having a proper license. So anyway, just wanted to highlight that because I know that kind of comes up as a question. I believe in the last session and maybe in this session, but definitely in the last session, there was proposed legislation around not allowing the medical board to do that. That didn't pass in the last session, but I do think it's important to continue that for the reasons I stated. All right, with that, item number 26, consideration approval of orders to show cause. Are there any items there? None there. 27, consideration and approval of revised, vacated, and amended orders. There is one item there. Is there any extractions or recusals on the item under number 27?
And I think we were going to give a little bit of explanation kind of on this one.
Okay.
Sure. Happy to answer some questions on this. Essentially, this is a nunc-pro-tunc order. We are asking you, board, to just acknowledge that there were some non-substantive errors in one of our orders. It has been an order that the respondent has already completed the terms for. So we're just asking you to approve those two non-substantive changes as laid out in the proposed nunc-pro-tunc order in front of you today. In the backup, you'll have the current order as well as the new order that would be issued.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Make a motion to approve as written.
Second, Barnes.
This motion's been made. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, that passes.
Just another comment about item 27. One of the things that we've noticed, it's kind of one of those we've always done it that way type things. In the orders, you have the board charges kind of at the beginning of the orders, and it kind of lays out everything that was initially charged against the licensee, and then you kind of get further down into it, and then it finally gets to what the ISC found, or and it's usually something less than what the original board charges are. We found that does cause problems at times for licensees, especially when it comes to making the record clear of what the findings were against them. And also it can be difficult at times in mediation where they don't want to accept perhaps an order that has terms of things that weren't initially found, but that was the original charge that was in there. So one of the things that we're going to do as staff is essentially change that portion of it to just kind of stick with what the findings were instead of having those original charges in there. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of the stuff that we do is very manual input type things. And so we've also had a few instances where something that's in the board charges, staff members will look at that, and that's what goes into like the NPDB report instead of the findings of it or some of the language in there. And so we end up having to revise those NPDB reports to make it clear that, okay, it wasn't this that was found, it was this instead. And so it'll also make things administratively easier on us, and it'll make things clear for the licensees and the public. So just wanted to let you know, you will be seeing some changes kind of in the layout of what the board orders look like. anyone have any questions or concerns with that?
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The proposed rules, 28 through 34, there are none there this time. Obviously, last time there was a robust conversation around that, but this time there's none. Which brings us to 35, which is our open forum for public comment. And I will hand this back to Brent.
All right. Let me get that one pulled up. We're trying to have our sign-in sheet for the for people that want to make the open comment. So we'll see if we've ended up with anyone signed up. It looks like we may have one. This is the point in the board where the public has the opportunity to make comments to the board. It doesn't have to be about anything that is on the agenda, although it could be. It could just be things that they want to bring to the board's attention, for the board to take into consideration for a future meeting. Because oftentimes, if there are comments, they're not specifically agenda items. The board, just a reminder, is limited in the kind of the dialogue and the back and forth that you can have, since it's not a posted agenda item to give notice to the public for discussion, especially if there's any type of decision to be made. But it can be something where you can ask clarifying questions, and then the board can decide and give direction to staff if they want to take that up at a future meeting. They can either be done today or after the meeting is over. So we do have a sign-in sheet, and we do have one name on here. There's no one here in the room, so we'll just go off of this sheet. Jose Maldonado. Yes. Come on up. Thank you for sticking around this morning to come and talk with us. See if you turn that mic on, make sure the green light. Let's test.
Test.
Okay, it sounds like it's working. Yes, please go ahead and state your name and who you're with, and floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Wow. Well, first, what an honor. It's actually being here. It's after 5 years of you all meeting that now I can see the faces of everyone. So Dr. Safran, Mr. Carlton, and Mr. Freshour that I don't get to see in person today, maybe later. All the members of the board, and definitely all the staff that is in the back, taking care of all of the things that you do. I hold you in the utmost regard because you guys have a tremendous job protecting the public, upholding the standards of care and disciplined physicians. So I am humbled to be here, and thank you. So thank you for all the work you do, but we are definitely here. And I say we because I represent a lot of doctors that are out there. My name is Jose Maldonado, Jose Roy Maldonado Jr. I had a license, LAA21. I was from 2004 to 2022, 18 years. And currently not active, but what I have here is I'm talking about House Bill 1998 from the last session, which is a very good law. It actually, it's all about transparency. It's all about accountability, and it's definitely about keeping the public safe. It's about protecting Texas. It's about not letting other people come here and try and hide and do things without people knowing. So I'm definitely for that law. It's a great law. But there's a concern. We have a heartfelt concern, me and other people, many doctors that I've reached out regarding the interpretation. And here I have a strategic plan from TMB that talks about the eligibility. It's 2529, and it talks about the physician license eligibility, Texas Occupational Code 155003, which it states here that the House bill amended the Occupations Code to refuse to issue a license if an applicant previously held a medical license revoked by the licensing authority in another state or a province of Canada for an offense that would be grounds for revocation in Texas. You're saying here that while the statute only refers to another state or a province of Canada, the legislator's intent was to prohibit licensure for applicants who had medical licenses revoked in Texas as well. limiting the application of the statute to only out-of-state applicants with revoked licenses based upon the same felony conviction, while allowing eligibility for Texas applicants revoked for the same basis creates an unfair result. Totally understand that. It's what's I think is happening or could happen is that a physician that comes with a license that is revoked in another state should go and fix that state's license first before they want to try and come here to Texas and practice. The application process in other places and most other states is a case-by-case basis. They go over all the details and then they decide. In my case is that, and I'm sorry, I'm still okay. So what I want to say is that this creates a problem for a physician who has a license to practice in Texas that has been revoked by Texas, because when you make us ineligible for reapplication without any other without any recourse, the licensure in other states, they will not give you a license because you need to go and fix that license first. So you're pretty much ending the career of a physician because it's just causing no other way to practice. So the recommendation was to consider your stance, to grant hearings and evaluate each applicant individually. We acknowledge that human capacity and growth for the redemption do exist. It approaches not only benefits the serving physicians, but also enriches our healthcare system with experienced, humble, and often empathetic practitioners that support those who have clearly demonstrated reform and resilience. Their journeys can inspire others and ultimately lead to better patient care. We urge you to reconsider your interpretation of the law and open the door for these physicians so they are able to rejoin the noble profession they love. Thank you for your time, and again, thank you for everything you do.
Yeah, no, thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. For our new board members, I'll just say is in regards to this, in the past, the medical board had the discretion to look at people who had previously been revoked or had felony convictions or incarcerations to potentially get a license again, potentially with restrictions on it. But with House Bill 1998 and also with a lot of other inquiries from individuals that did not want to see that happening anymore in Texas. That's kind of where 1998 came from. And so our interpretation so far has been to be kind of very strict with that going forward. There are other pieces of legislation that would kind of undo some of that, of what 1998 did. And so it is an ongoing discussion at the legislature.
Do you mean House Bill 4255?
It may be. I don't want to say the wrong House Bill number, but there are bills that have been filed to try to give more flexibility again for the board. And so we'll definitely see what happens with that session. We'll be happy to provide input if we're asked about it or testify on it. But the comments that you've brought up have been raised by others as well.
Yes, I know I'm not the only one.
Correct. Yeah. So, but we are where we are at this point, but we'll see what happens with this legislative session or any additional direction. And the board can also, through our general counsel, we can discuss it internally again as well. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that's the only one that we have that has signed up. Is there anybody else that has joined us online that would like to make a public comment at this time? Another few seconds in case someone is on mute.
While we're waiting, do we have all our information in for consent agenda? Yes.
Seeing some head nods. So yes. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that will complete agenda item 35.
Yep. So 36, discussion recommendation, possible action relating to personnel matters. There's none there. I'm just going to move to the consent agenda. Items to be considered at any time, which we'll do it now, but you've got two items under there. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve the minutes as written.
So
Second.
consideration approval of December 13th, 2024 medical board meeting minutes and action items and committee reports and consideration approval of minutes and action items of committees meeting during the board meeting. There's a motion by Dr. Vanderwide.
Second, Martinez.
And seconded by Dr. Martinez. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Great. So I'm not sure when we're going to meet in person again. I know that we've been trying to make sure way ahead of time that we're able to reserve this room. I think the thought was that we'd at least try to do it, well, definitely once a year, but possibly twice a year. So, there's a possibility that we may do it one more time this year. We'll certainly try to. I think it's healthy and it's great for all of us to be here in person. Certainly appreciate seeing a lot of the new faces in person. I think it's certainly important for us to, as we deliberate issues together, to know each other, to understand each other, and to be able to have those conversations with each other. So with that, thank you. Safe travels back home, and really great seeing everybody here today.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, great. And if everybody wants to stick together just for a second, because I think Alicia wanted to at least get a...
All right, the time is 10:07. Thank you.